want to go to. I just knew that I didn't want to go into like the traditional sense of astrophysics or quantum physics or something like that, right? So I looked around and eventually I came to find biophysics. Biophysics is essentially is essentially a field that applies the understanding of physics to see how biological systems work. So some of the things that you can see in this field would be physicists trying to model protein structures or trying to do evolutionary dynamics and whatnot. And that actually goes in line with what I do for my research, which I'll get to. So I was interested in this specific field, right? And I looked around at the different physics faculty that specialize in this field. I eventually emailed them, say, hello, my name is Min. Please accept me. please set up a meeting so that we can talk about your research some more, because I was really interested. Eventually, I got a chance to talk to Dr. John Barton, and we met. He told me about his research, and I fell in love with how exciting it was. So let me go ahead and talk about the projects that I work on. So I work specifically on HIV latency, and I'm going to be trying to work on trying to predict influenza. So what is HIV latency? So if you guys don't know, the HIV virus is a retrovirus that is very strong at at staying alive in our body systems, because it can take its virus and then integrate it into the host genome. And so while there are therapies that reduce the amount of HIV in the blood, because HIV has a really long half-life of like 44 months. It takes a really long time for this for HIV latency to actually go. So as a result of that, my specific research focuses on how to study this population size, and then how can we use that to understand and eventually make progress to eradicating HIV. And then the other project that I work on is going to be influenza predicting. So we know that yearly we have to create vaccines in order to fight against influenza, right? So I was thinking, now how do we use computational physics in order to actually predict what sort of influenza is going to come next? And so utilizing one of the techniques that my PI developed, something called maximum path likelihood, the idea is that we would use this technique to predict the next dominant strain and then eventually make contributions to developing a vaccine against it. That's basically my research. Yeah.
Thank you, Min. Okay, so now we have our next ambassador, Alex.
Hello, everybody. That was incredible, Min. I just wanted to say that was incredible. I love that, and I also love Dr. Barton. So I'm just so enlightened. So hello, everybody. My name is Alex. I am a fourth-year biology and entomology double major, and that picture is 3 years outdated. So sorry. So basically, my research is ecology and evolutionary biology, molecular biology, as well as just ecology research in general. I primarily work now in data sciences, bioinformatics, and like metabolomic stuff. So tons of molecular work I've experienced a lot of different types of research, from field work, super dry lab stuff, super wet lab stuff, to working from home. So I've kind of seen the breadth of what that's like, some of my experience. I have a little bit of clinical research, but I was in RISE, I was a Chancellor's Research Fellow, and I'm also involved in like science writing on campus through the Undergraduate Research Journal, so you can talk to me about that if you have any questions. And so, little funny story, super quickly about my starting research experience. The current lab that I'm in, I actually joined very early in October of my freshman year, back in 2017. And it was not my first lab experience. It was the second lab I tried to join at UCR. I was super interested in being involved in research, and the professor who I work for is very popular because at the time the word was that she was super willing to work with students. She was like very welcoming, she was very warm, and so she was super well known. And everyone was like, the people who I was talking to, there were like several people applying to join her lab, and I was like, shoot, how do I, some like random first year who's barely had an interaction with her, make it known that I'm the student who wants to join her lab? And so a friend of mine introduced me to her at a meeting. I was able to meet her through something called STEM Pathways, which is also through CNAS. And I was really lucky to meet her. And I made such a great connection. I was like, wow, she's so incredible. Now I have to join her lab. I love this stuff. And I literally waited. I found the person who introduced me to her. I waited for him in Orbach, and he was sleeping in Orbach Science Library. He was sleeping in a corner. Somebody texted me and he was like, you can find him and he's hidden somewhere on the, like, in a corner of Orbach. And I was like, great. Orbach's not just a 4 square building. There's like 1,000 corners. So I went around both the second floor and the third floor and found him after about an hour. And he was asleep, taking a nap. And I waited there for like 3 hours. I did work while he was waiting, while he was sleeping. And I waited for him to wake up so I could ask him if he could like give me like a reference so she could like look at my letter or look at my app first or something, just to make sure that she knew that I was like trying to get into the lab. And so, yes, I'm not as neurotic as I was as a first year, but that's what I did too. That was the first thing. And I promise you, that's not normal. That is not something you typically have to do. Typically, like, you can just cold email professors without knowing them. But that was just a really funny example of how I started off in my lab. And I've been there for 3 years since. I've been loving it. It's an incredible experience. So most of my work is like, I work with pesticides. I work with bees. So I'm like the bee lab dude. I save bees, right? It's pretty amazing work. I absolutely love this line of it, but there's all sorts of other work that I've been involved in besides just like with bees. It's pretty like broad in terms of evolutionarily speaking. So if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to let me know.
Thank you, Alex. I love that story. I can't believe I've never heard it before.
I know, I hate it. I'm embarrassed by it.
Okay, so we have a lot of people that joined in late, so I just want to tell you guys again that we're just doing, we have about 5 ambassadors, and they're all just going to speak about their individual research experiences for now and how they got involved in labs, and then afterwards we're going to open it up to questions. So next we have Jose.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jose. I am currently a 4th-year undergraduate biochemistry major, and I work in Dr. Morris Maduro's lab. You might have had him for Bio 5A. And I'm currently in the Department of Cellular, Molecular, and Systems Biology. So basically what that means is that this is a huge department, and it's very like interdisciplinary. So you might find faculty here that are a part of many departments. But let me go ahead and first start off how I got into research. So as an incoming biology major, I was trying to figure out what it is that I wanted to do after I graduate. You know, most people go on the pre-med path, but I wasn't really interested in that. I remember that during my orientation, they talked a lot about research. And I was like, oh, well, you know, well, maybe I'll try that. And then before I came to UCR, like, I have no prior history of anybody who went to college or was in research or anything like that. So I went in blind. I was like, I don't even know what research is. Like, research to me is I go on Google and I find something, you know, for my project. But then it was a huge eye-opening experience once I got into the lab. So what I did was I just emailed a couple professors that I found on the faculty page on the UCR website. And then I just sent them a small email saying who I was, why would you want, what I would want to do in their lab. And I sent in my unofficial transcript and my resume, which is like, it was a very sad resume at the time, but it's okay because, you know, we're all freshmen, you know, we're all trying to build up our resume little by little. So you shouldn't like feel bad if you don't have any prior experience, because I didn't for sure, like at all. So I got into the RISE program, which funds undergraduates who are a part of learning communities or through other means for 10 weeks and with their mentor. And during those 10 weeks, I was in charge of integrating foreign DNA into the genome of C. elegans. So I worked with blue light. And basically what I was trying to do is replace gamma radiation and X-ray radiation, uh, which are typically used to damage DNA. So instead of damaging DNA with those two radiation sources, I was trying to use blue light. And the system that we are using is C. elegans, which are a species of nematodes. And if you've ever watched SpongeBob before, they're the people who ate his house. So those are the species of animals that I work with, which is very like, it's very crazy to me. Like, it's a far cry from what I thought I would be doing. But I've learned that, you know, I'm a really big worm guy now. I think they're very funny, and there's a lot of potential for experiments to be done in their systems. So I gained a lot of experience that first summer. Everything was taught to me by my faculty, Dr. Maduro. So I didn't come in with any prior knowledge. Everything I learned was in the lab. And then after my first year, I applied again to another research program called MarkUStar, which funds underrepresented students. For 2 years, they pay for tuition and they pay you a monthly stipend. So currently, this is my second year in the program. I've loved it so far. I've gotten working on a different project, still in C. elegans with Dr. Maduro. I could have moved to a different lab if I wanted to, and if you in the future find yourself wanting to join a different lab, you can do so as well. However, I decided to stay just because I was already working on a project, and that project involved metabolism, and I was studying metabolism by measuring ATP inside the worm using a sensor. So this past summer, I applied to a research opportunity outside of UCR. I applied through the Leadership Alliance program, and I was accepted to the summer research opportunities at Harvard University. Unfortunately, due to COVID, I didn't get to go to Massachusetts, so they were supposed to fly me out, and I was supposed to be there for 10 weeks, just like I was for RISE, but like at Harvard. But it's okay because they still had a virtual program, and I got to do the research that I was willing to do anyways when I was over there. It just, you know, we did it from home. And in the Harvard lab, I did a completely different turn. So like, I wasn't working with worms at all. This time I was working with human embryos. And what I was studying is in vitro fertilization. And if you don't know what that is, that's basically like an alternative to getting pregnant. So what it does is, like, you know, you get the eggs from the female patients, you fertilize them, and then you implant them back into the body. And what we were doing is we were studying these embryos to see their early development, to identify vacuoles. And if you want to ask me more about my research, I'm happy to talk about it. But some of the stories, I've had a great experience so far. I'm happy to tell you how I got into each of these programs and how you can get into these programs. I am not anywhere near means like I'm not super smart. I'm not smart. I'm nowhere near the top of the class or anything. Like I guarantee you that if you're interested and you have the same drive, like you can get into these same programs. As of right now, I'm working on a different project from home, and that's where I am right now. So.
Thank you, Jose. I love you changing the backgrounds. I was just watching you the entire time for the next background.
Oh.
So thank you for the presentation. Okay, so next we have OG.
Hello, hello. Yeah, really. How's my audio, by the way?
It's good.
It's good? Okay, thank you. Let me know if it ever goes bad, because my Mac is not the greatest sometimes. But I love that presentation, Jose, and your whole story. The backgrounds had me captivated the whole time. Unfortunately, I was not ingenious enough to do that, but enjoy my UCR. So my name is Ogenaloma Ogenesumi. I go by OG for short just because it's significantly easier. I'm a fourth year major. And yeah, I guess my main story, I think I'll start off from towards the beginning. My research came after my freshman year, when I applied for, again, the same program that Jose was talking about with the RISE, particularly SALSA. And so SALSA within the RISE program was just a group of us where we were focused on basically working on genetics and genetic expression and variation in citrus plants, and then also working on different ways to kind of increase marketability of different research projects and how you can actually turn that into being an effective product later down the line. And how I was able to basically apply for that was a little bit piggybacking off of what was said before. Just your freshman year, if you're in a learning community, you have the opportunity to apply for it if you get into that specific type of program, and then you can apply for it and hopefully get put in it. And that was something that was a really, really good experience for me early on, just exposing me to this is what research is. This is what you can really do and accomplish, and understanding that sometimes one of the biggest lessons I learned is that failure is kind of part of the process. Even you finding out something that doesn't work is helpful for the next person. And it's still publishable data sometimes, where it's like the next person now knows that this is what you did, these are the results that you did, to not do that. And that's an advancement of science in itself. And so it's not always about like getting the specific hypothesis that you want. Luckily, I was able to get the results that we were looking for, but that was after many and many failures. So I think that was one of the biggest things that I've learned from that, and was fortunate enough to move on to working under my next PI, who was one of the medical students at the UCR School of Medicine. And so that's something that I think is a little bit under like known about, or just not quite as well known, where all these medical students, like, they need to do research projects, but they also want people to help them do it for them. So it's like a win-win. And so, just going out to the medical school and just reaching out to see if there are any students that are taking in undergrads to basically help do the work that they might not want to do as much. And then you get your name published on the paper as well. So that was a really good segue project, where with him, I was able to work on 2 major projects. One was just mental health of medical students, just measuring anxiety and what was the other one? Anxiety and depression in medical students. And then another one where it was just more focused on the public health aspect and just the efficacy of, it's called antibiograms, where we're trying to determine whether some drugs are going to be as effective to be administered at what times. And so those are 2 projects that I really enjoyed being able to kind of work on and try to get like publishable posters and stuff. And I'm able to talk about them during my med school interviews. And it's definitely a great experience. And the last one that I'll talk about is my favorite one that I'm currently in right now. It's one that focuses more on neuropathology, and it's with this drug called Regulin. And what it does is that basically we were taking, actually I'll talk about how I got into the project. Was more so I sent an email out just like everybody else to the PI of the lab. His name was Dean Ford. I shot him that email, and it took a lot of time. I drafted it out. I had several of my friends look it over, make sure it was nice and polished and picture perfect, and did not get a reply. And so that was something that I first used. It's a little bit discouraging, and I'm sure a lot of us here have gone through that process where you shoot out people emails that you spend hours on trying to make sure they're perfect and show all of your skills, and you're not always going to get a reply. I was just very fortunate enough to have a friend who was working in lab that then introduced me to him, and then he then was like, all right, I'll give you a shot. And I just came up with a lot of energy and a lot of enthusiasm, like yes, and like, I read your project on X, Y, and Z, and I guess whatever I said was enough to impress him, and he gave me a shot. And I'm currently working in his lab from home right now. And so that's something that I appreciate. And if you ever want to know more about any of the projects or how to, like, more, I guess, unorthodox ways to get inside labs, my friend Louis, who got me into that lab, he literally waited outside of the School of Medicine for days just to see him. Like, he would not have waited the whole time, but he waited for him to come out, and he would talk to him on his way to the car and showed him his enthusiasm and stuff. And that was how he got in the lab. So a lot of crazy and interesting ways to get in the lab outside of the orthodox, just shooting the email and hoping. But that is all for me. Thank you.
Thank you, OG. I want to learn about all of these experiences. I want to hear all these stories at another time. Okay, Sophia's next.
Okay, hi everyone, my name is Sophia. OG and Alex, you guys both have crazy stories, so I didn't know about either of these things, so it's definitely funny to hear them. So I actually had 2 separate experiences. I was part of a lab, and then I left, and then now I'm part of a different lab. So I'll talk about both of those. So the first one, lab that I was a part of, was after my first year. I applied to a program called SALSA, which I know was briefly mentioned earlier, which is like a subset of the RISE program, which is like the 10-week summer program that you can do at UCR, where you're fully funded. And that's actually where I met OG and Sheree, so it's a little ironic. And so for that one, I was placed into a lab. I didn't get to choose a lab, so I was placed with Dr. Sean Cutler. He's, I guess, a plant person pretty much. So I worked on my own project over the summer. It was PYL13, like knockout gene. And it was really cool. Like, it was the first time that I'd really done any sort of kind of lab work and experience. And I was really interested in like learning new stuff and like having my own project. And so after the 10 weeks, I ended up staying for the rest of the year in that lab. But I guess sometimes you have to realize that like whatever lab you're in, just because you're in it doesn't mean you have to stay in it. And so, you know, as much as I liked the research part of it, and my lab was great, there was nothing wrong with my lab, I just wasn't as interested in it as I thought I was going to be. Not that plants aren't great or anything like that, but I'm definitely more of an animal person for sure. So after spending a year in the lab, I left, and then I actually joined a program called FLEAP. So it's a faculty-led study abroad program that I applied for. So it was 6 students, and we went to Namibia, Africa for 3 weeks, and we did research over there. So we went to this research station in the middle of the Namib desert called Gobabem, which is actually where NASA does all like their Mars research, which is really cool. And so we spent the first like 10 days like thinking of a project. So because there's only 6 of us, each of us had our own project. So I chose to work with this little gecko called the Pachydaculus rangii, and they're like these cute little tiny pink geckos. They're nocturnal, they're super cute. And I was really interested in their eyes. So my project was on how they can run in different light conditions. So I spent like 10 days collecting data at night, which is really cool. It was super tiring, but the time change definitely helped a lot. And then after those 10 days, we spent the next 2 weeks actually on a safari. So that was a little perk, I guess. And so we're still doing like lab stuff. We were analyzing our data, but a large portion of it was also just like looking at really, really cool animals and camping. So it was definitely one of the best experience I ever had. So if you guys ever got the opportunity to study abroad, or if you want to study abroad, I definitely recommend doing it. It was awesome. And actually very few people at UCR do it. Like across the country, I think it's only 10% of the undergrads that do study abroad, and at UCR specifically, it's only 2%. So if you do study abroad, it looks really good on applications. So I highly recommend doing it. And then so after doing the 3 weeks, I asked my professor if I could join his lab. So I've been part of his lab ever since then. So it's been about a year and a half. And I'm still working on the projects I started in Namibia, but now I'm just doing like the analysis part of it. And I'm actually trying to publish a paper, and I'll be hopefully, I'll be first author, but I'm hoping to publish it by the end of this academic year. Because there's a lot of math stuff that goes into, you know, publishing a paper like after you do the experiment. But if you guys have any questions about like SALSA and like the RISE program, or any questions about like study abroad and the FLEAP program, feel free to ask me any questions. So that's my little spiel.
Thank you, Sophia. So crazy story about that is that she fell in love with geckos so much she bought one home.
Yeah, I did.
I can never go into her room ever again because of that.
Yeah, we're roommates, so sorry if that is confusing.
Okay, so now I'm going to open up the floor to questions. You guys probably have a lot of questions about, you know, the way that they apply to internships and stuff like that, so feel free to go ahead and ask. And a funny story is that I believe all of us except Min, sorry Min, I still love you, but me, OG, Jose, Sophia, and Alex were all part of like RISE or SALSA. So it's also a great opportunity to meet people and like connect and learn through them. I know like one of the reasons that I joined this program, like the ambassador program, is because I also knew like all of the people were going to be in it. So it's a great way to also find like other opportunities and stuff like that, being involved in like summer internship programs. Okay.
Yeah, so Enrique, so the way most internships are doing it when it's virtual is it's typically they have the same sort of workshops that they would have in person, except they're virtual now. So they usually have guest speakers, and they give you just professional development tips, such as like, oh, how to write an abstract, how to, you know, conduct good research ethics in the lab, and that can, you know, range from a variety of topics. They can also teach you how to write a proposal, or they could just teach you different skills that you might need during your research journey. And then they also typically will connect you with the faculty member that is doing research online. So that's like the caveat of virtual research, is that if you're interested in getting wet lab experience, that probably won't happen till like next year, unfortunately. But that doesn't mean that there's nothing interesting to do virtually, because I was a wet lab sort of student before I did the Harvard program online, and it's cool to see both aspects of research virtually and in the lab.
So in terms of RISE, I know we have a couple of questions about RISE. So yes, I would say it is competitive, but I don't believe it's only 6. I think it's a lot more people. I remember there being around like 40 or 50 of us, if I'm not wrong, for one summer. And so SALSA, the program SALSA that you guys kept hearing about, is actually a subset of the RISE program. So you can apply to SALSA if you take, it's called DG, Dynamic Genome. It's BioL 20. That's the lab for 5A. So if you're a part of a learning community, you have an opportunity, I think most of you are, I believe so. So you would have an opportunity either next quarter or your spring quarter when you guys take 5A to do DG, which is that lab, and through DG you can apply to SALSA, which is a summer program. And then for RISE, it's just every freshman gets an opportunity to apply, I believe, spring quarter, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, I think there was like about 20 of us or so for salsa.
Mm-hmm.
And Rise alone had another like 40 or so.
Yeah.
There was a decent amount.
Yeah.
I wanted to answer the question regarding on advice on how to get research experience even during this remote experience. So I know for some of my friends in the physics department who are transfer students, what they specifically did was that they talked to the professors during office hours, and they used that opportunity to, one, get to know the professor more, and then also ask about the research and to gain an opportunity whether or not they want to do research with them. So I think it's specifically harder right now to get experience with wet labs during COVID, but I know that for computational, there's always going to be work available to do.
Mm-hmm.
To add on to that, I think Min said it like amazingly well, but outside of like specifically computational fields, like all of, like, for example, I can speak on behalf of a lot of biological sciences, talk to a lot of professors about these sort of things, and it make a lot of professors are sitting on a lot of years of research, and they are very grateful to have students to help them out with data management and data analysis, and still have students actively participate in the research process despite them not being in person. So I feel like, especially if you're a transfer student, you know, you're concerned that you don't have too much time left at UCR and you want to be able to maximize your time here and participate in research. I feel like if you're able to convey that to a professor, even if you're cold emailing them, and let them know that you are truly you're genuinely interested in the research process, and you are willing to be a part of the team and actively engage with the scientific literature as well as the material away from home, and prove that like you're capable of this distance learning and distance research participation, that should be no issue at all. Like if you can convey that and say that you are actually interested, you want to be able to do this, and you are asking how you can proceed, most professors should have options for this. Very few professors are like solely doing work that needs to be completed on campus, and most labs do have people alternating coming into campus every now and then at like one at a time to abide by social distancing guidelines. So that may or may not change depending on the state of California guidelines that come in place from now till whenever, but definitely as of now, that is what's happening. So it is not impossible to join a research lab now, and I highly recommend that you look into it and email professors that you're interested in, even though we're still distance learning. Like, it can't hurt, right?
Yeah, and
just adding on to what Alex was saying. So I know that for some professors, obviously, like, especially now, no undergrads can go to the labs on campus. Hopefully that'll change soon. But if you just like email the professor and ask them if you could like join their weekly lab meetings. I know that some professors are open to that. Like my professor, like, is okay with like had one person come in just like to just join for our weekly meetings and kind of just like hear how they read research papers and see what the lab is kind of doing. So although you may not be able to get as involved as you would in normally, you can definitely ask for that. And then there's also a question that was in the chat, like, do postgrads continue their research at UCR once they're accepted into specific professor's lab? I was just wondering, like, what do you mean by postgraduates? Do you mean like undergrads who had just graduated?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Okay. Yeah, I know. I think you can, after you graduate from UCR, I think you can still work in a lab for up to 6 months afterwards. But after that, you're not allowed to anymore. So you can if your professor allows it, but I think most people don't.
I kind of wanted to echo off of the whole computer science background sort of research that was going on. If you guys are interested in taking any classes that UCR offers to get just a little bit of background into like programming or statistical analysis, there's CS 009. Let me type it in the chat. That'll give you like introductory skills with like Python, which is a great skill to have if you're in a lab. And there's also stat 147, which that's teaches you how to use R. And R and Python are one of the best tools to use when analyzing, your data sets and things like that. So having taking even just one course in those areas, that's something that you can put on your resume and you can point out to your professor, hey, I've taken this class, So I'm just providing resources to you guys in case you guys are interested.
And to answer Yara, I believe that's how you say her name, your question about do you have to take dynamic genome to get into RISE? No, you do not, as long as you were in 5A, I believe. Dynamic genome helps you get into SALSA, which is a subset of RISE, but you can get into RISE without taking DG. And then I know so since everyone was talking about like online research and hopefully returning soon, I would say like do definitely reach out right now into break and like beginning of winter quarter, because we also heard yesterday from the deans that they are looking into possibly allowing undergraduates back into labs from next quarter. So if it's not next quarter, it's definitely going to be like spring quarter. So you guys will probably have a chance to go back and do actual lab work. So do start like applying now or emailing professors now.
I guess I can go next. I received a private question about research with a UCR School of Medicine student and what I did to assist them, and kind of going out based off of that. So I guess first re-emphasizing how I was able to get that project again. It's just, really reaching out to the front desk and trying to get connected to any of the medical students in any way that you know. I actually met the one that I'm working with at a AMSA volunteering project where we just went out to San Bernardino, we were volunteering, and there was a bunch of medical students there. And that's how I initially got in contact with them. There's a lot of ways to get in contact with them. They're fairly involved with the community, but if you don't know any other ways, you can just go out to the front desk or give them a call. And so kind of working with them, that was something that my job was more of just doing a lot of the research. So he gave me access to a lot of different journals and ways to kind of do a lot of preliminary research, and doing the heavy lifting on things that necessarily they may not want to do as much. And so it's a lot of like culminating a lot of the data, putting a lot of the poster together, figuring out like answering questions and like what's the hypothesis here, where we're working. And it was more so just an amazing learning experience from my end. We'd start every meeting with like a little, like, it was just random quiz. Like he'll do one of like the pub, like the pure, like peer group learning things where we're just in a group and he'll give us like a case and a patient and like just give me some examples of X, Y, and Z. And it was definitely kept me thinking on my toes and helping me put our research into perspective. And that was a lot of what I was able to do and get my name on those posters, and something that's really helpful for my applications as of right now. And other questions was how long was it and what was it? Okay, so how long it was, I started it at the end of my sophomore year, and I've just kind of been working towards it towards the end of my third year, and we're hoping to like move forward with our project, but then COVID happened, so we haven't made as much progress in the last 7 months-ish. It's kind of been somewhat stagnant, but as soon as the med school kind of gets back on us, we'll hopefully be back on our feet and moving forward to try to further publish that, because we've already kind of put out the preliminary work together. I think that was, does that fully answer your question? Okay, hopefully that does. If anything does else pops up, just shoot me another DM. Thank you.
And then I can answer, I briefly answered in the chat, but someone asked me, did you study abroad during the school year and how did it affect you? So my specific program was only a summer program. And like I highly recommend FLEAP because it's actually a UCR professor who goes with you to study abroad. And just because I did ecology, like there's like a math professor that goes over and there's other opportunities. And the professors change every year. So definitely like keep checking the website and seeing which professors are willing to go study abroad. I'm not sure if they're doing it this year, but they would probably do it hopefully following year. And so I really was looking at study abroad programs for the summer because I didn't want to like miss out on anything like during the school year. But just because like that's what I was doing there and you want to do something during the school year, that's totally okay too. Like you get units when you go study abroad. So when I studied abroad, I spent 3 weeks and I got 8 units. So I got 2 different classes, which was really great. But you still get units that can usually get transferred over. And so there's like 3 different kinds of study abroad. Sorry? Oh, so there's 3 different kinds of programs for study abroad. So there's like the FLEAP, which is the faculty-led one, and then there are study abroad programs through like the UC system. And so those are definitely gonna units that will transfer over to your to UCR. And then there's other study abroad programs that are not through the UC system, and you can still apply to those, but it might be a little bit harder to transfer your units over. So it's just something to consider. And then someone also asked what year we applied to SALSA. So if you're in the dynamic genome class, you'll have the opportunity to apply to SALSA after that year. So it's during your first year you'd apply, and then you would do SALSA that summer after your first year. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, so like Alex said, for non-SALSA RISE applicants, they're typically due in the spring, the applications, and you get an email. And then for SALSA, you learn about it towards the end of your dynamic genome lab, and then that's when you would apply. So I believe if you take it in the winter, you apply at end of winter, right, Sophia? And then I took it in spring, so I applied end of spring. And I also saw a question about what did you guys have on your resume when you were applying for RISE or internships? So I know it's like difficult because you guys are doing like remote learning, but also as a first year for like internship programs that are looking for first years, they really don't expect a lot of experience in research. A lot of them are just looking for interest. So if you're able to show through your writing that you really are interested in research and pursuing that, it's often a good way to start. And then when they do interviews, I know not all of the programs do interviews, but for SALSA we did have an interview, and it was just talking to them and being curious and showing interest, which I think like really helped getting into the program.
I would like to add for the non-SALSA program, I never took dynamic genome, and so that's totally fine. A lot of people, all of the students who I was with in my cohort for the RISE Learning Community Scholars did not take dynamic genome either. We all did Bio 5 Lab A. I will say that you do need to stay in your learning community for an entire year. So that's the first point of being eligible for the RISE program for non-SALSA. And then additionally, it is highly recommended that you don't need research experience, but you do need to be familiar with the topic that you're going to be researching, specifically the PI. And I say that because as part of the application for RISE, you do need a letter of recommendation from the professor who will be sponsoring you for your work. Because so you can't just say, oh, hey, I'm really interested in research, and that's it. You need to have part of your application includes a professor who needs to be like, I am willing to have X student in my laboratory for 10 weeks where I will mentor them and give them funding and all of the parts of RISE. So make sure that if you are interested, you start reaching out around now, like winter quarter is a good time because it's a pretty sizable application. You're going to have to work on it and then be ready to, a good time to like finalize it is winter break because usually it's due like week 1 or 2 of spring quarter. So just something to keep in mind. Everything's really well outlined on the website.
Yeah, and I also just want to say that's also a really good way to get interested into research, as in like to start going back to what Adrian asked. It's a good way for you to start looking for research and the interesting things and the things that you are interested in by looking at the different professors, what they research on, and whether or not you specifically are interested in that as well.
I want to answer a question in the chat about having to propose your own research. So that depends on faculty to faculty. There's some faculty who will tell you, yeah, bring me your own project. And if that's your first time ever getting into research, unless you already have a project in mind, try to like avoid that faculty. Try to get a faculty like, okay, no, let's talk about it. Let's see let me give you my expertise on what you're gonna do. And some faculty will straight up just say, here's my project, I need you to work on it, and then we'll write it as your proposal. So, you know, it's all about the kind of connection you want to have with your faculty member. If there's something wrong with having an independent project, and if you're really interested in something already, then find the faculty who will say, yeah, bring me a project and we'll see what we can do. However, if you think like, you know, it's too early for me to start thinking like asking those kinds of questions, then yeah, find faculty who already have something or who are willing to work with you on something they're gonna do in their lab. Oh, and then can you participate in RISE while taking summer courses? No, they specifically say that you cannot, because you're supposed to put in 40 hours a week for those 10 weeks, and that'll heavily interfere if you're taking any courses.
Yeah, just adding on to what Jose was saying. So that was for RISE, and then for SALSA specifically. So you apply to like the program SALSA, and then they split us up into 2 different groups. So there was a citrus group, which had like about 10 people that were in that group that worked with like the DG professors on a project. And then the rest of 10 of us got randomly like assorted to professors. And then you would like meet your professor and come up with a project with them. So it's just a different route, and you don't have to come in with a research question or know your professor. You apply to the program, and like the application process of like for the interview, they just ask you like what kind of research background you've had, like what your future job kind of you want to do, and like why you want to do research pretty much. So it's a little different.
Yeah, I remember when I applied to SALSA, my application was just talking about why I was interested in research, like if I had any experience in it. And I personally did not have any experience in research when I was interviewing. So they asked me about if I had anything related to experience. And I talked about taking biotech courses in high school because a lot of DG is biotech. So I just kind of related it to that and talked about why I love that and like why I wanted to pursue that. So just talking about that. And then I also have a private question that asks if the DG dynamic program is still gonna have SALSA this summer. I'm not sure. Sophia is nodding.
No, because I talked to the coordinator, Dr. Burnett, a lot, and it is not looking so great this year, unfortunately. So, but that not to say that it won't happen, but last year they were going to do it, and then last minute they had to cut it because they lost funding. So I'm not sure if they're going to have funding again this year. So like be optimistic, but I'm not sure.
I think RISE will still be happening, right? So you guys will still be able to apply to RISE even if you don't have SALSA to apply for.
I believe that UCR is going to also have their summer research, their pre-trainee program, which is also available to freshmen and sophomores. So make sure to keep a look out for that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I can confirm that RISE is still going to be happening. However, unless things are like miraculously better by summertime, which there's no guarantee of, there is going to be some form of like RISE. However, the vast majority of it, if things are still bad, are probably going to be like COVID friendly, and you're going to be working from home. So you'd be prompted to find professors who would be willing to support you from distance learning, and you'd still be working full time, but from home, doing things with the rest of the laboratory, like on Zoom.
I just wanted to say that there's also another option, just in case you don't get accepted into these summer programs. Just because you don't get accepted into it doesn't mean that you still can't participate in research over the summer. One of my friends who was a transfer student, he still participated in research over the summer of his 4th year, and then went on to continue it into his 5th year, and eventually published his own paper in theoretical physics, first author and everything too. So you still can participate in research even if you don't get accepted into those programs.
And then I had a question about what year is recommended to do FLEAP. So I did it after my second year and going into my third year, and I really enjoyed that because I had taken all my lower division classes, so I felt like comfortable at the school and stuff like that. And then I was like kind of looking for a lab anyways to like kind of transfer to. So like any time that you want to do it, like people, of the 6 people, we had 2 people that were graduating, so they needed actually the FLEAP course to graduate, and then there was 2 of us who had just finished our second year, and then 2 of us who had just finished their third year. So there was like a whole array. So I recommend probably doing it after your second year at the earliest, just so that you have like, you feel comfortable and you have your undergrad classes, because you still will be taking the class when you're doing FLEAP. They're upper division classes, both of them.
Yeah, and then Manuel, you had a question about if I'm currently in a lab, can I also do internships over the summer? It really depends on your PI. So you can apply for a internship through your PI. So that would just be working in the same lab you're in. But then some PIs also don't mind if you are not going to come in during the summer. So you can apply for like another internship during that summer, if that makes sense.
One opportunity that I posted, I sent the link into the chat. It's called an REU. It's funded by the NSF. It's a very similar thing to UCR's RISE program, but it's not. It's for any student who's still actively pursuing a plan. So not a, I believe that's what your friend did, right, Min? Did your friend do an REU?
My friend didn't do an REU. He just continued working with the PI,
Oh, okay.
but other friends have applied and got accepted into REUs to do over the summer.
Okay, yeah, I have a lot of friends who did REUs. Like RISE is like kind of an REU. It's not specifically one because it's through UCR, but basically an REU is like we had students working at UCR with us, our RISE cohort, who were on an REU visiting UCR because of UCR's research ability. Like we were so high at certain things, we were so good at certain things. So an example is like, say there's a university or like a museum or an aquarium around the world that does amazing things that UCR does not offer. You can offer, oh, okay, yeah, Jose did an REU there. Yeah, REUs are just like incredible. They still give you like $5,000. They have like stipends. It's just a really incredible experience. Plus they pay for travel. You get to go, get to do amazing things. So definitely recommend that. And then additionally, even though it won't be part of a program, just for Denise's question, you can, if you're involved in research in your senior year, you can actually get hired by that same lab if you are interested in that and like working full time as a research like technician or a researcher as part of the research team. So you're not limited if you are a paid employee at UCR as like a staff scientist or something like that. However, that's not really like, there are no programs to officially facilitate that. The only other thing I mentioned was the Fulbright Scholarship, which is a scholarship that funds you internationally to either conduct your own research or teach English and conduct research on English in other countries. And I can send information about about that into the chat.
I also want to echo off of what Alex said. If you want to participate in an REU, definitely do so, because a lot of these REUs offer housing and a stipend and a meal plan. So you can get, all 3 benefits there. So like you don't, a dime won't even come out of your pocket, and they'll even fly you out there or pay for your gas to get there. And remember, most REUs are specifically for students who do not go there. So these programs are meant for you guys because they don't offer them to the home campus students. And I'll also link in the chat the website to the Leadership Alliance program. This is the REU website if you're interested in doing an REU at an Ivy League school in the East Coast. So that's the program I applied to, and feel free to check that out.
Yeah, and then just adding on to Jose, so if Salsa does go, Salsa's pretty great too. So you get $5,000 too. You also get housing and food and parking. So it's a little bit different than RISE. And then someone also asked if our labs are still functioning during COVID. So I guess a couple people can talk about that, but my lab is still functioning. We're still doing like weekly lab meetings, but unfortunately, like I can't go into the lab. So I'm doing like my analysis portion online, but it's a little bit harder. So it's been a lot slower, but if anyone else wants to add on to that.
Yeah, I can probably add on a couple of things. So one thing I just wanted to also shout out to, if you do get into a lab that is funded by any means, it's something that you want to know to put out on like apps and stuff, because I unfortunately didn't know that beforehand, but it does really show something that you can sort of bring money into whatever institution that you're doing, which is important in the science field. But also on top of that, as far as like ways that labs can stay involved during COVID, for my particular lab, the thing that they've shifted me towards is working on putting together a review. So it's sort of a being able to kind of look at the literature that's already published, plus our own data that hasn't been fully published yet, and putting that all together into a cumulative review with my own thesis, and get to be like the first author on that, which is really cool. Not the the bench work that I was excited to kind of get into, or not necessarily like the rat brain surgeries and stuff that hopefully if we get back in lab I'll be able to kind of continue. But it's still a nice way to get some good experiences, and also do some computational work as well, with gene expression and stuff. So there's ways to continue, just not the same as before, obviously.
I don't know if we answered Manuel's question. He asked this earlier. He said, if I'm currently in the lab, can I also do internships over the summer, or does that depend on the PI I want? And he said that he is in a computational modeling and biology processes lab. Yes, you can always participate in a summer internship. Typically, if you want to remain with your professor, then you just work with your professor to apply to these UCR programs. However, if you want to go to somewhere over the summer, I honestly I wouldn't care about what my PI said. Do what you want to do. Go follow your dream. Never let a PI hold you back from like what you want to do, like what you want to accomplish, because that's like a toxic relationship to have with your PI, and that's something that you guys should talk about beforehand. So.
Jose brought up something amazing that I wanted to just say. Like, I mean, everybody's saying incredible things. These panelists are like beautiful people, inside and out. But I would say that UCR is like a phenomenal. Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. It's important to really know your worth. Like, UCR is a phenomenal institution, and we have the luxury and benefit as undergraduates right now, and the privilege to attend a top tier research institution that is not oversaturated with like a lot of students. Like, there are amazing students and there's a lot of students here, but like here at UCR, it's this golden time period where we are able to probably pick the labs we're interested in. We can apply to several labs and try to join, and probably maybe even get as accepted to multiple, or able to really, you're not just forced into a certain thing, or you're just not just trying to join research labs at other huge state universities and stuff like that. Like, UCR has incredible professors and incredible research being done, and they care about students, they prioritize us, and they really want us to get involved in that. Like, that's a really amazing thing that we, as early as first years, can get involved in the scientific process and really like learn and actively engage with like disseminating information like that. And that's a huge thing that I really can't overstate enough. So keep in mind that like, you're a human being, your professor and PI is a human being. Like, really evaluate them. Like, find out if this is a good situation for you. Find out if you get along with your professor. Don't just join the first research lab you find because you got in. Find a professor who you actively enjoy communicating with. Like, I'm extremely close with my lab, and I know that's a privilege and a benefit that many students don't have, but it's also one that lots of UCR students get to have, because of how incredible the professors and the working experiences and environments are here. So definitely like keep an open mind and try to broaden your horizons always, but like look out for yourself too, and constantly try to make sure that you're doing the right thing for yourself. Don't just do research for the sake of doing research. Find somebody that interests you, and just find something like a topic that interests you, and I guarantee you there will be an amazing professor waiting for you to get involved. So it's incredible. There are so many professors here. So just definitely keep an open mind.
Yeah, I want to add on to that UCR, we're known for our research and we pride ourselves on it. So you guys, there's so many different topics that we do research on. So you guys are obviously going to find a very good lab, and also a lot of us like that we do research in. When I did my first lab, I barely saw my PI ever. I only interacted with the grad student. So I never really got to know him on a personal level, which I didn't really like. And in the second lab, I'm basically best friends with my PI. Like, when we used to go into lab, he'd always like take us out for dinner. we'd always get like ice cream if we're working late and stuff like that. So it's amazing. Try to really build those connections because those help you as well, because they're also going to let you know if there's like any opportunities that they heard of that you don't know about. So it's a great way to connect with people. And even when you work with the grad students in lab, that's also like a really good experience because you meet all different kinds of people who came from different backgrounds who are interested in different things. So that really opens you up to a lot of different things that are available to do once you graduate that you just didn't know about before.
Yeah, and then there was a question in the chat. Does DG help you prepare for this lab work, or is it different because it's like mostly online now? So I actually am ULA, which stands for Undergrad Lab Assistants for Dynamic Genome. So normally there's the professor, a TA, and then a ULA who are like in charge of the classes. So I've been tutoring a couple students in DG since we've gone virtual. And personally, I think it is very, very different than it would be in person. Like in person, you get like hands-on experience with like that pipette and like, you know, doing different like things, like hands-on things. But just because you don't have the hands-on experience, you don't have that specific lab, doesn't mean that the stuff you learn in DG is not important. Like learning stuff like PCR and like that kind of stuff are still like important skills. And just knowing, like understanding what it is and like how it works, because that is used in a lot of labs at UCR. So the skills you'll learn in DG, like they are really helpful. It is different than it would be in person, but don't like disregard it. It'll still like help you for sure.
Yeah, of course. If you guys have any other final questions, feel free to ask in the chat. You can like speak up, whatever you guys prefer.
If you guys have any other questions, I'm gonna go ahead and leave my email in the chat. And then if you guys ever want to shoot an email to me, feel free.
Yeah, I'll follow on too with that as well. We're all here to help.
I might as well too.
Just a general point. So the ambassadors, we're always here to like talk to any undergraduates, learning community, freshmen, sophomore, junior, seniors, just to help you guys like mentor you too. So if you go to our website, you'll see our emails and phone numbers there. And I promise I pick up phone numbers from random calls just in case all the time and get scammed, but I will still pick up. So if you guys want, feel free to reach out to us in any way.
Jose is showing you the card. Someone asked if the recording's being posted. Shri, do you know?
Yes, so the recording should be emailed out to you. If you were in a learning community, I believe Jen Copley will be emailing it out afterwards. I'll be sending it to her. Yeah. If you're not, you can just go ahead and like message me privately and I can send it to you as well.
Can I get the recording too? I want to re-listen to Alex's inspirational speech.
Yeah, that speech was so good. My
right?
God.
I'll crop it and like save it and send it to you guys every night before you go to bed.
Morning alarm. There you go.
Exactly. Wake up to some inspiration.
Alrighty, I guess there's no more questions.
Thank you all so much again for presenting. It really means a lot. I'm literally going to probably play this recording like on repeat forever.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, for the recording, you can just send me your email and I can email it to you. So you can just message me privately.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I know someone asked the question.
Thank you guys so much. I have a question. What website do I go on to like talk with you guys? Because I heard there was like a meeting or like you can go like meet with people. I don't know where.
Yes, it's called CNAS Science Ambassadors. So if you just like Google it.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you guys for doing this. It's like super informative.
Thank you, of course.
You can actually find the website right now.
Good. Yeah, so make sure you guys pursue research if you're interested. Even if you're not thinking about going to graduate school, I would highly still consider it. They pay you guys a stipend, unlike med school where you have to pay them. But no, med school's cool. Med school's cool too. So don't listen to anybody, but follow your own dreams. You know.
If you guys have any questions, you can stick around and ask as well.
I finally found the website.
And there's 3 people left. Good job, OG.
Man, you guys are so cool. You guys are so cool.
Yeah, I didn't know you guys did all that. I was like, damn. I thought I was the only one, to be honest, that did. Well, I know you guys did research, but I've never heard you guys talk about it. You know.
Yeah,
I know we rarely do.
I think we all impressed ourselves. I didn't know what everybody else was on to, but the CNAS Ambassador program is really bringing some talent our way.
Yeah.
I know. I was reading when you guys all signed up on the forums. I was reading all of these and I was like, oh my god, there's so many options to pick from.
Did you have to
There
like
wasn't
deny?
one person where I was like, they wouldn't be okay. I was just like, wow, like, huh.
That's crazy. You actually had a really diverse panel. Like this was like one
I
of my.
know, that was the plan. I tried to get everyone from like different fields and like different experiences. So that was the goal, so I'm glad. And I'm really glad that we had a good turnout.
Yeah. I'm going to stop recording. Hold on.